Hello and welcome to the Believe Crew podcast. The business is you. I'm Jamie White, founder of Believe Crew and your host. Let's jump right in. Today we have Katie with us here on the podcast. Katie is the newest Believe Crew member, so I'm super excited to introduce you to her. And she is a theta healer, and everything else I will have her tell us because I like to hear it right from you. How did you get involved in what you're involved in, and what are you excited about?
Yeah, so my journey has been, as most journeys are, there's a lot to the story. The short version of how I came to be an intuitive mindset coach is that I was working a business, a home-based business, and I had one daughter born during that time. And then I had daughter number 2 born during that time. And I wanted to leave my other part-time position and be able to fully provide for my income, supplementation that I gave to our family's income. And so in that process, I decided to hire a business coach. And that was my first big investment in myself. And it has expanded into something very unexpected, which is now that I am coaching. So she used a technique called ThetaHealing in our sessions. And that's the technique that I use with my clients. And it was so exciting to me when I discovered ThetaHealing because I wasn't new to the concept of muscle testing, but I was using it for foods, just for clearing, like testing to see if I had come in contact with a toxin that I needed to ask be cleared out of my body. But then I found out that you could use muscle testing to determine what beliefs you were holding in your subconscious. And that was absolutely groundbreaking for me because I had been introduced through a book called The Miracle Morning. That was the very, very start of my development really the start of me choosing to invest in myself. Because at that point, I read that book and I realized that that it was safe for me to have a vision, that vision was actually possible for me to attain. It gave a version of how to do that by working on your belief system, repeating affirmations, doing visualizations of what you wanted. And so then when ThetaHealing entered the picture as a technique to achieve those things, it was just groundbreaking because I then realized that what I had been doing that was very laborious, I could simply, once I got clear on what needed to change, I could just ask that it be done, ask my higher power that it be done, do any work needed to do around it in releasing, the trauma, forgiveness, and then it would change. I've always wanted to help people, like even in my past business, which was a fashion industry of, helping women dress themselves. It was all about I really just wanted to serve and help people. And so when I came upon this and I started to see the rapid transformation that I was experiencing in my immediate direct reality, those things that you butt up against every single day that you're I just want this to change, whether it's with your husband, your kids, your, messy house, the stress that you feel from the minute you get out of bed in the morning and the anxiety or the depression or whatever it is. And I started to feel those things changing. I was I'm onto something. And then, very quickly God started telling me this, you will no longer have peace doing what you're doing with the fashion business because I have something, you got to go deeper with people. So that's how it started. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I know even the little bit of work that we've done together, I have felt and seen that difference. And we were in a similar place as you. We had already come to terms with different ways that we could test. Our family uses multiple ways depending on, which kid or my husband. And we've all kind of found a way that works for us. But we were using it on emotions and we were starting to be aware of different things that we could, kind of think about and pray about and be aware of. But then you kind of added another level to our thinking. And so now we're it's normal conversation to be well, what is the divine definition of that? Maybe we need to know that. And so it's been super helpful to have those things added to our life.
I love that you mentioned that because I literally just downloaded for myself the divine definition of a podcast before this because I was
that's perfect.
I realized I was just a hint stressed. And then so I was okay, God, do I have the divine definition of a podcast? I muscle tested it. It was no. And so
Yeah.
I downloaded it, and just like immediately it came, oh, it's just a conversation. Like, you have conversations all the
Right.
time. It's fine.
Right.
But that's what I love about downloading divine definitions, is that all of a sudden you have this realization come of like, what is it from God's perspective? And it literally just enters your
Yeah.
consciousness.
It is. It is. And just being aware of that, again, like you said, I love that you brought out the book, The Miracle Morning. And what I found to be interesting is on the podcast, there's usually one book that is mentioned. And I don't even have to ask people, what is the book that you would recommend to people? Because there's a book that created an awareness to something that then shifted our thought process. And then it was just the beginning, right? And so for you, it was Miracle Morning. For someone else, it could be a different book. And then the other thing is we've connected over the book, Lori Kosinick's book, The Laws of the Universe and the Bible, which has been a different book, kind of introducing us to some things that was like, I was already aware of some of this. This sort of fills in some of the gaps. It's been really good to create that connection with other people that are like, yes, actually, this is important to me too.
Yeah, I was going to say,
What is
I
it?
have two
Yeah.
books, and that would be my second one, The Laws of the Universe and the Bible. Like,
Oh, that's
those
perfect.
stand out as two pivotal moments, like reading or listening to The Miracle Morning. It's a short book. I don't do the practices in it anymore because I feel like the technique that I use now with ThetaHealing has taken place, and I'm doing those practices all day long, every day.
Right. Right.
So it's like a full integration of that. But yeah, two pivotal points, Miracle Morning and then The Laws of the Universe and the Bible. So very grateful to
That's
the
awesome.
authors for willing to let those things flow through them.
Right, right. So when you help clients today, what is it that you love to help clients with?
When I started to realize that I even had a divine gift, first of all, and then I started asking God about like, what is my divine gift, or my divine gifts? And the divine gift that came through to me was I have the gift of encouragement. And it was like humbling and thrilling to recognize that and to have God tell me that. And so, but then even just recently, that's like even evolved a little bit more, like to further explain that, God has told me like, your gift is to help people see themselves the way that God sees them. And the way that God sees us is with so much love that you can't even begin to fathom it. And so what thrills me about working with clients is that when they come into a session and there's fear, there's resistance, there's blocks around something, and then just in working with them, and it's one belief comes, and then it's the next belief comes, and then I ask them a couple of questions, and then it's some forgiveness work comes up, and then it's some trauma. It's just like this beautiful little path that God is perfectly pointing, like what's next, what's next, what's next. I just get to follow and be a conduit, and it's just watching those things fall away and God's love flowing in. It is just phenomenal. And whether you're working on your relationship with like yourself or your spouse or your kids, or you're working on business stuff, I guarantee you it happens like that in every single session. You think like, oh, business is separate or this is separate. God deals with it all in the same way. It's removing blocks so the love can come in. It's just so cool.
I love that. And I know that your personality loves aesthetic as a motivator from the personality assessment that we did. And so when I think about that, like you kind of visualizing this love flowing in, you're like, oh, this is so much better.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
Not the heavy, icky stuff, the other stuff that's there. And so, and even just knowing that people are leaving feeling lighter, or there's stuff that's been worked through that now is going to make it so that that path is just different, to be able to walk different. That's cool. When you think about yourself and the path that you've been on, is there anything that stands out as like this work I didn't even know how impactful it would be?
Yeah. So right now, this is just interesting because right now I actually have one of my former clients staying at my house for a couple of days. And her journey and what she's been on, like she had a total breakdown, which I say like a breakdown is it's either actually a breakthrough or it's like the start of a breakthrough.
Mm,
So her breakdown,
I like
like most
that.
people's, it was the start of her breakthrough.
Mm,
But it took her to a
wow.
very, very low place. And I know she's always
Mhm.
told me she's fine with me sharing her story. And so, like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, on every level, like just basically kind of destroyed.
Mm.
She and I share, a history of early childhood abuse. And so I really resonated with her on that. And to lead her through the process, and it was very, very deep, very intensive, the process of healing that abuse and how all of
Mm.
that has impacted her in so many ways. But what has been so like surprising and rewarding is that now she just finished her second, round of theta healing classes, and she's now become the practitioner. She practices on me, and she, like
The
right now
roles have
she's
shifted.
right. So we trade work now, and she's the person that God is providing for me. Like we talked about becoming more visible. And so just to be
Mm.
completely open and authentic, I recently when I set that intention to be more visible, all of a sudden things started to crack open, and it didn't feel good. But what was happening is there was a deep dark cellar in that abuse trauma
Right.
piece of me that I had never cracked open. I had never let anybody in. And she just like out of the blue, she's like, I think you seem so open, but there's a place you've never let anybody go. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's
Mm.
go there. God is giving you that
Yeah.
for a reason.
Yeah.
So I think that's what has been so surprising. Like I've been aligning people lately with the divine definition of seventh plane healing. And that is where the healing happens with the technique of theta healing. And the idea of it is that you don't have to give anything in exchange to receive this healing, that the healer receives in the healing, the client or the practitioner receives, the client receives, everyone receives in this seventh plane healing. And I've seen it come full circle with this client of mine. And that has honestly been, it's just opened my eyes to like a new level of possibility, even of what can be in my practice. Yeah.
There's so much in there, like all the different things that you're willing to share, like
Mhm.
how difficult it can be sometimes to be willing to be visible or to even want to be visible. Sometimes we push it away and we don't realize that it's because of an internal trauma from who knows how long ago. And oftentimes the other options that are out there in terms of like, how do I become more visible? Well, it's like, well, you need to do this and you need to do that and like create good habits. Um, and we want to. Oftentimes we want to be the people that are creating good habits and doing good things, but then for some reason we just can't get ourselves to show up or we're procrastinating and we don't know why. And so having a different way of implementing it, I don't know if that's making sense, but trying to
Right.
explain the shift that happens in your life compared to just trying to do the doing. And we can spend a lot of energy trying and can't figure out why it's still not
Right.
working. I love, there's a story that Tony Robbins shares where he asks somebody in the audience to try picking up the chair. And so they go and they pick up the chair. And he's like, no, no, no. I didn't ask you to pick up the chair. I asked you to try to pick it up. And so then they go and they hold the position and the effort that's required to pick up the chair without actually doing it. And I feel like that is what we're often trying to do when we're having these conversations or being frustrated with ourselves and not really forgiving ourselves for the fact that we can't figure out why we're not doing what we say we want to do. And so I feel like these other opportunities to have that close connection with God and really downloading the divine definitions of things so that we're not being stuck or opening up those new doors. What is really what's made so much progress for me and for our family in our life? Is that similar to what you would say would be? I mean, how does that sound to you, or what comes up for you when I say
Yeah.
that, when I ask that?
It's right on. So, the biggest breakthrough revelation for me was when I became friends with fear and resistance. And the only
Ooh.
way that you can become friends with fear and resistance is know that there is something on the other side of it, and
Mm.
that something, whatever is on the other side of it, doesn't have to be powered through, that it just needs to be released.
Mm.
Um, and so I'm going to just give you an example. Last night, my husband and I, in the kitchen, we're probably both tired. Like, he makes some little offhanded comment and I'm like, triggered,
Right.
and
Right.
yeah. And then I'm like, and then and then he's triggered that I'm triggered, and so,
That's the cycle. How did you know? Can you see my life?
right, exactly. But then it ended up being very beneficial because I was finally able to express to him of like, because he said something to me that was meant to help me. I didn't feel like it was a help, and so I was triggered. But he came at it with a good intention. And so, but I was able to explain to him, like, instead of me just saying like, I'm going to be more humble in the future, I'm I'll take your advice more, et cetera, et cetera. I need to step into these feelings right now of I am
Mm-hmm.
triggered and I need to understand why, because I would rather change what's causing me to be
Right.
triggered so that I know that I can be more humble in the
Right.
future when something like this happens. So yeah, that's just a little example.
Yeah, and it completely makes sense because what I've found is that I don't react once these things have been shifted in my life. So if we are quote unquote triggered, it's usually a reaction to something that is inside me. And if I can get to a place where I can respond, then we can change the cycle where there's, maybe other things that come up.
Yeah, the trying, like I guess when I was repeating affirmations and doing all of those things, I was trying really, really, really hard, and I kind of felt like I was beating my head against a wall a little bit. And so, yeah, that's the thing that I've found is that it's a lot more about surrendering than it is about trying.
That is a really good perspective. The other thing that you brought out makes me think about when I was having breakdowns, and they were actually moments before breakthroughs. Again, good wording, good to know. And I was having complete meltdowns. It's not like it was this little, anxiety attack I shouldn't say little anxiety attack. It wasn't that I was having, a little bit of nausea. It was complete meltdown, out for the day. I don't think this is going to work. And what you're saying is embrace the relationship with fear in a different way. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I would love to. So if you are avoiding fear, you'll never be able to understand really your purpose or your path. Because so fear always, what I love about fear is that fear will always direct me to something that I need to change to move forward. And so when that fear comes, it's like there's an invitation to the fear, to feel the fear and to understand why it's there, what's behind it, because I know that with God's help, I can shift whatever it is that's causing it. And the impact of that is going to be so much farther reaching than simply just removing the fear around this issue. It's going to impact every area of my life. So that's why I love fear so much.
So what comes up for you with that verse in the Bible that talks about perfect love casting out fear?
That's the whole concept of, so the fear is what is it in me? Another way to say it would be, what is it in me that's blocking God's love from coming into this? Because when the perfect love comes in, the fear will be gone.
This is all stuff that I've been aware of and studied, and it's coming in from a new perspective, and just I'm appreciating the perspective that you're bringing to it, and needing some space to like actually recognize how I can work with fear in the future instead of being afraid of it. Like once we create fear of the fear, then that's a whole other layer. And then when we allow the doubts and fears, we've talked a little bit about what you do and how you help clients, and a little bit about the impact that it's had in your life and some stories. Is there anything that you would love to express that you feel has been left unsaid?
Well, okay. I guess this was put on my heart this morning. I just knew that this is something that I needed to share in the podcast. So recently, God pointed me that I need, like, my reading in the Bible needs to be in Proverbs. And so today was Proverbs 4. And what I'm doing as I go through Proverbs is like, if there's anything that jumps out at me at all, I'm muscle testing it to see if I'm in alignment with the divine definition of that thing, or just using it to let beliefs come up for me. Today, the verse was, the beginning of wisdom is acquire wisdom, and with all your possessions, acquire understanding. And so what I wanted to leave, like, I've heard you in the past on your podcast ask, like, is there any advice that you would have or anything that you want to leave people with? And my advice was going to be invest in yourself. That was what came to me this morning as I was driving before I had read this. And so then when I read this, I just thought, with all your possessions, acquire understanding. Like, it spoke to me of investing in yourself in whatever way God leads you to invest in yourself. But then just thinking about wisdom and acquiring wisdom, and the beginning of wisdom, that was like the divine definition that I needed to ask for, of like, what is the beginning of wisdom? And it came to me, the beginning of wisdom is love. Like, love is actually the beginning of wisdom. And then it led me to the verses of, like, the greatest of these is love. Like, the greatest, there's nothing greater than love. And then this one I was really just kind of thrilled with. So I just like asked really to know and understand God's definition of wisdom. And it just came to me like, wisdom is the application of God's love to everyday living. And I was like, wow, just to really, because I think in the past, I asked also for the divine definition of the relationship between love and wisdom. I asked to receive that. And actually, I just feel moved right now. So if anyone who's listening to this, or like you too, Jamie, like, if you want to receive all of those things that I just said, just say yes.
Yes.
And it will be done. It will be done, whether you're listening to this, 2 years from now or whenever. But it was just, I think in the past I had compartmentalized wisdom and love. And today it was so exciting to see how it was like, God was just like, they're one and the same. Like, they're just all, it's just this most beautiful relationship. So that's the only thing I felt like was left unsaid.
That's amazing. And give us a little piece of what it's like to just say yes.
Oh yeah. Like, what does that mean even? It's just that easy. In my practice, and with the ThetaHealing technique, that's what I ask my clients to do to receive a change, or to receive a divine definition, is just to simply say yes. The reason for that is it involves your conscious mind in the change. And then also, I don't want to be going around changing people's belief systems without them, co-creating that with me. Like, right. You have to be invited. You have to invite your client into the process of that. So that's the power of the yes.
Yeah, that's super awesome. So now that you do this, has it changed how you interact with your family? Has there been any resistance from others outside of your internal family?
Yeah, and actually a lot of resistance within my internal family.
Okay. Both sides.
Yeah. Both sides, everywhere, resistance on all sides. Yeah, that was the hardest part, is that when people don't understand something, they usually do fear it. And so this was something that really no one, very, very few people in my inner circle understood. Like, even the concept of how energy is, like, we're all energy, like, just like it all felt very much, I think I was in a group that was very much of the physical, like, it's all about being able to see it, and albeit faith-based people, but keeping God in spirituality in a box of, it can only touch this area of my life, etc. And so, yeah, I guess, and the thing that I've come to realize about that resistance that you experience when you're doing something new is that it really is, the world is your mirror. It's all just showing you stuff that's inside of you anyway, whether it's coming from the outside or the inside. And so what's happened to me is that as I've changed myself and my own belief system, I mean, I've literally just watched the resistance and others fall away. It's just, wow. It's comical, and it's almost irritating sometimes, because it's like, I want to have power, but I don't want to have that much power because I want to be able to blame
Right.
somebody, you know?
Right.
Right. But really, so anytime you're
Mm.
experiencing resistance from the outside, just look inside. It's in there. You'll get to the bottom of it. Yeah.
It's so good and so painful all at the same time, because I was
Yes.
living in blame 8 years ago and frustration. And for some reason it was serving me to live there and point fingers. And the more I realize that I need to look internally, a little bit more painful it can be to
Right.
realize that if I'm blaming someone else, I need to look inside. Well, I appreciate you being on today. Is there anything else that you would love to share with the audience?
You know, the only thing that comes to me is there is literally nothing that can't be healed. That's it.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And really the only thing that's required is to be willing to show up and put it all on the table. And that's it. You don't have to know how you're going to change it. You don't even have to know or believe that it is possible, but you just have to be willing. And you actually, I work with a lot of people who their relationship with God is very, very broken. You don't even have to know who God is. You don't even have to know if God exists. All you have to be willing for is to show up and put it on the table. And there is healing available. No matter what it is, it can and will be healed.
Well, I feel like that's a mic drop moment. And I encourage everyone to consider what it is that they would love healing in. Thank you so much for joining me today, Katie. Looking forward to everything that you're going to create.
Me too. And I'm so thankful to be creating alongside of you.